My name is Irene Dickerson. I'm 27 years old, and I didn't shut off my boyfriend's dream out of anger. I shut it off because he stole from me and expected me to smile while he did it. I'm writing this because my hands were still shaking hours later, because part of me wondered if I'd gone too far, and because enough people have tried to rewrite this story for me that I need to put the truth somewhere. It can't be twisted. I'd been with my boyfriend, Johnny Caldwell, for almost 4 years. We lived together for 2.5 of those in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, beige carpet, thin walls, a kitchen light that flickered if you didn't twist it just right. But it was ours, or at least that's what I thought. When we moved in, it made sense for everything to be under my name. I had the better credit score. Electricity, internet, renter's insurance, even the lease itself, mine. Johnny Venmo'd me his half every month, without issue. It worked. Or so I believed. Johnny worked as a warehouse supervisor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Around $52,000 a year, benefits included. I'm a dental hygienist pulling in just under 60. Between the two of us, we were comfortable, not wealthy, but stable. Date nights without guilt, groceries without counting every dollar. A future that felt solid enough to plan around. I had $11 or $400 in my personal savings account. Money I'd been building slowly for years. Emergency fund, maybe a house down payment someday, maybe both. That account represented discipline, sacrifice, security. 3 weeks before everything blew up, Johnny came home at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was off that day folding laundry on the couch, half watching a cooking show I'd already seen twice. He walked in grinning, backpack still on his shoulder. "Babe," he said, voice buzzing, "I've got huge news." I smiled without thinking. "Okay, what's up?" I quit. I stopped folding. The shirt in my hands just slipped. "You quit?" I asked. "Like your job?" "Yeah," he said, nodding like he'd just announced a promotion. "I'm going full-time with streaming. This is my shot." Johnny had been streaming as a hobby for about 8 months, mostly battle royale games. Around 300 followers on Twitch, 0 income. But he talked about it constantly, algorithms, grind, culture, breakout moments. "Johnny," I said carefully, "we talked about this. You said you'd wait until you had at least 1,000 consistent viewers before even considering going part-time." He waved that off. Plans change. The warehouse was killing my creativity. I need to be fresh, energized. I can't build something real if I'm exhausted all the time. I wanted to scream. Instead, I inhaled slowly. "Okay," I said. "So how are you paying your half of the bills while you build something real?" That's when his tone shifted. Softer. Calculated. "I was hoping," he said, "that you could cover things for a little while. Just a few months. 3, maybe 6. Then when I blow up, I'll pay you back triple." Every alarm in my body went off at once. But I didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I said I'd think about it. Because I loved him. Or thought I did. Fast forward to last Thursday. I came home after a 10-hour shift, my back aching, my patience already thin, and walked into what looked like a tech warehouse had exploded inside our spare room. Boxes everywhere, foam padding, cables snaking across the floor. Johnny was standing there proudly adjusting a massive monitor. "What is all this?" I asked. He beamed. "My setup. I had to invest in myself. You can't compete with a budget rig." My stomach dropped. "How much did this cost?" I asked. "Don't worry about it," he said. "It's an investment." "How much, Johnny?" He hesitated. "Like $8,000. The room tilted. "Where did you get $8,000? He wouldn't look at me. "Johnny, I borrowed it." "From who?" Silence. "From who?" Finally, barely audible. "From your savings." I felt something inside me go completely still. "My savings account," I said. "The one that's in my name, that you don't have access to." "You left your banking app logged in on the iPad," he said quickly. "I just transferred it." I stared at him. "You stole from me." "It's not stealing," he snapped. "We're together. What's yours is mine." That was the moment everything changed, even before I knew what I was going to do next. I told him I needed space. He seemed relieved. Said he had a big stream scheduled that night anyway. And while he went to chase applause from strangers using money I'd spent years protecting, I started making calls. I didn't leave the apartment right away. After telling Johnny I needed space, I went into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in my lap, staring at the opposite wall like it might explain what had just happened. My brain did that strange thing where everything felt both muffled and razor-sharp at the same time, like the world had gone quiet, but every thought was screaming. $8,000. I opened my banking app with shaking fingers, even though I already knew what I'd see. There it was. A transfer I hadn't authorized. A date and time burned into my memory now. Money that had taken me 3 years of discipline overtime, shifts, skipped vacations, and quiet sacrifices gone in seconds because I'd trusted the wrong person. Behind the bedroom door, I could hear Johnny moving around, humming to himself. The sound made my stomach twist. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't ashamed. He was excited, energized, like he'd just unlocked the future and couldn't wait to show it off. A few minutes later, he followed me into the bedroom, still talking like nothing was wrong. "Babe, I know this is a shock," he said, leaning against the doorframe, "but you'll see. This setup is going to change everything." I didn't look at him. "When were you planning to tell me?" I asked quietly. "I mean, I figured you'd notice eventually," he said, then laughed a little like it was a joke. "I didn't want to stress you out." That laugh did something to me. It peeled back the last layer of denial I had left. "You didn't want to stress me out," I repeated. "So instead you drained my savings without asking." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Irene, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." I finally looked up at him. "Explain how." "It's temporary," he said. "Money comes and goes. This is about investing in our future. Don't you want us to win?" "Us." He kept saying that word like a shield, like it erased consent, like it turned theft into teamwork. "I need to process this," I said evenly. "Can you give me some space tonight?" He relaxed instantly. The tension he'd been pretending not to feel drained right out of him. "Yeah," he said. "Of course. No problem. I've got a stream at 8 anyway. Big one. A lot of people said they'd show up." That was it. That was his priority. Not the look on my face, not the trust he'd just shattered. The stream. He left the room already mentally somewhere else. I sat there for another 10 minutes, listening to him boot up his new equipment. Fans whirring, the click of keys, the low hum of something expensive coming to life powered by my money. Something inside me hardened. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't throw anything. I stood up, grabbed my phone, and walked into the kitchen. I called the electric company first. "I'm moving out," I told the representative. "I need to cancel service effective immediately." There was a pause. It usually takes about an hour to process. "That's fine," I said. Next was the internet provider. Same explanation, same calm voice, same request for immediate termination. My hands were steady now, my mind clear in a way it hadn't been all evening. I went back to the bedroom and packed a bag. Essentials only. Laptop, documents, jewelry, clothes for a few days. I left everything else exactly where it was, including the tea I'd poured earlier still cooling on the kitchen counter. From the spare room, I heard Johnny's voice rise in excitement. "What's up, everyone?" he said, projecting confidence. "Welcome to the stream. Looking crisp tonight with the new setup." I didn't hesitate anymore. I picked up my bag, walked out the door, and locked it behind me. I drove straight to my sister's place. I didn't know exactly when the power would cut. I didn't need to. I just knew that at some point the screen would go black, and for the first time that night, Johnny would feel the consequences of what he'd done. I didn't watch it happen. At least not directly. I was sitting on my sister's couch, knees pulled to my chest, staring at a muted television that I wasn't really seeing. My sister had offered me tea, food, comfort, anything, but I'd shaken my head at all of it. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't cold. I wasn't even sad in the way people expect you to be after something like this. I was calm. Too calm. That scared me more than if I'd been hysterical. My phone sat face down on the coffee table. I didn't want to look at it. I already knew what would be there. Calls, texts, confusion turning into panic turning into anger. I'd lived with Johnny long enough to know the sequence by heart. About 40 minutes later, the phone started vibrating anyway. Once, twice, then again. I didn't answer. Later, much later, I learned the exact moment it happened. Johnny was mid-match, fully locked in adrenaline high. According to one of his friends, he was talking to Chad about how this was just the beginning, how he was finally committing to his dream. His webcam light was glowing. The new monitors were crisp. Everything looked perfect. And then nothing. The lights cut out mid-sentence. The monitors went black. The stream froze, then disconnected. His viewers watched the screen go dark without explanation. No outro, no apology, just gone. At first, Johnny thought it was a breaker. He tried flipping switches. Nothing. Then he checked his phone. No Wi-Fi. No data coming through. That's when the realization hit him. I wasn't there to see his face, but I can imagine it perfectly now. Shock, then anger, then fear. My phone finally lit up again. This time I picked it up. 23 missed calls. A text came through at 1:02 a.m. "What did you do?" I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "Canceled the utilities that were in my name since I'm moving out." The reply came instantly. You can't do that. I felt something close to satisfaction for the first time that night. I did. Another message. You just destroyed my career. I exhaled slowly. Your career is your problem now. There was a pause. Then, what about all my equipment? The PC could be damaged from a sudden power loss. That was it. That was the moment any lingering doubt evaporated. Sounds like you should have thought about that before stealing $8,000 from me. I blocked him. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because my mind kept replaying everything leading up to it, every red flag I'd explained away, every time I'd been the responsible one, the stable one, the one who picked up the slack and called it love. By morning, the fallout had already begun. Johnny's mother was the first to break through. She left a voicemail so long it cut off mid-sentence. Accusations layered over concern, over outrage, over something that sounded like disbelief that I dared to step out of line. His sister texted next, then his best friend. I didn't respond to any of them. By noon, I finally answered his mother's call, only because she'd hinted repeatedly that she might get the authorities involved. You can't just leave him with nothing, she said the moment I said hello. He has no power, no internet, no way to work. I almost laughed. His work was playing video games, I said, and he has no power because the utilities were in my name. I canceled them when I moved out. You did that to hurt him, she snapped. No, I replied evenly. I did that because he stole $8,000 from my savings account without asking. That's actually a crime. Silence. Then colder. That's between couples. You don't air dirty laundry. You work it out. There's nothing to work out, I said. We're done. You're going to regret this, she said. He was the best thing that ever happened to you. I hung up. By the end of the day, Johnny had already spun his own version of the story, one where he was the dreamer betrayed. The victim sabotaged the man whose future had been ripped away by a vindictive woman who didn't believe in him. And I knew deep down this was only the beginning. The messages didn't stop after that. They multiplied. Johnny's mother kept calling from different numbers. His sister sent long paragraphs about family loyalty and support during hard times. His best friend tried guilt, said Johnny was sleeping on a couch, that he was humiliated that I'd gone too far. I didn't respond to any of it. What finally broke my silence wasn't another message. It was a knock. Sunday afternoon, 2 days after I left, my sister opened her front door and froze. Johnny was standing there, unshaven, eyes red, wearing the same hoodie he'd slept in when we still shared a bed. He looked smaller somehow, like the confidence he'd worn so comfortably had deflated overnight. We need to talk, he said, pushing his foot into the doorway when my sister tried to close it. This is between me and her, he added. I stepped forward. Say what you need to say, I told him. You have 2 minutes. He didn't waste them on apologies. You destroyed my stream, he said. My followers are asking where I went. I missed 3 scheduled streams. Do you know how bad that is for growth? You stole $8,000 from me, I replied. We're not discussing your Twitch analytics. I told you it was an investment, he shot back. I was doing it for us, and he gestured wildly. You sabotaged everything. There was no us in that decision, I said. You quit your job without telling me, then took my money without asking. That's not a partnership. That's entitlement. His jaw tightened. You never believed in me. That one almost worked. For half a second, doubt crept in. Maybe I hadn't supported him enough. Maybe I'd been too practical, too cautious. Then I remembered the bank statement. You're right, I said calmly. I don't believe in you. Not anymore. His face fell. So that's it, he asked. 4 years and you're just walking away. You walked away first, I said. When you decided your dreams mattered more than my trust. He switched tactics, then voice softening, shoulders slumping. Baby, he said, tears gathering in his eyes. I messed up. I know that, but we can fix this. Just come home. I'll figure out the bills. I'll pay you back. With what I asked. You have no job, no income, and now no platform. I'll get the utilities back on, he said quickly. I'll put them in my name. Great, I said. Do that. His relief was instant until I continued. The apartment is still under my lease, I said. So you have until the end of the month before I notify the landlord I'm breaking it. His expression shifted from hope to panic. You can't kick me out, he said. I live there. You're not on the lease, I replied. You never were, and I'm giving you 3 weeks' notice. That's generous. He left after that, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. That night, the smear campaign went public. An unknown number texted me a screenshot from Johnny's gaming Discord. He'd posted about me, called me financially abusive, controlling, claimed I'd pulled the plug on his career out of spite, said I was holding his equipment hostage. I wasn't holding anything hostage. His gear was still in the apartment. I just wasn't funding the electricity anymore. That distinction didn't matter to his audience. Strangers started sliding into my DMs, calling me names, telling me I'd ruined a good man, that I was toxic, heartless, Vindictive? I could handle internet strangers. What I couldn't handle was when his mother called my mother. Somehow, she tracked down her number and decided to discuss the situation. My mom told me later what she'd said. "Your son stole $8,000 from my daughter," my mother replied calmly. "She's not ruining anything. He did that himself." It wasn't stealing, his mother argued. They were in a relationship. Where my mom corrected, and taking money without permission is the definition of stealing. The call ended badly. I got a text minutes later. "Your whole family is toxic. No wonder you can't keep a man." I screenshot it and saved it to a folder on my phone. Something told me I was going to need proof. Things went quiet for a few days after that. No calls, no texts, no surprise appearances. For the first time since everything exploded, I thought maybe, just maybe, Johnny had finally accepted that this was over, that he was licking his wounds, figuring things out, leaving me alone. I should have known better. The letter arrived on a Wednesday morning. It was forwarded to my sister's address, thick cream-colored envelope, my name, typed neatly on the front. I recognized the tone before I even opened it, official, confident, written by someone who expected intimidation to do the work for them. A lawyer. Johnny's lawyer. I sat at the kitchen table and read it twice, then a third time, because the audacity of it didn't register all at once. They were demanding 4 things. First, the immediate return of Johnny's property, the streaming equipment I had never touched. Second, compensation for lost income from missed streams. According to their calculations, I owed him $2,400 based on projected earnings. I actually laughed out loud at that part. Third, reimbursement for a $380 electric deposit he'd paid to get power turned back on in his name. Fourth, and this was my favorite, an apology for defamation based on me telling people he had stolen from me. I set the letter down and stared at the wall for a long moment. Then I called my sister's friend, a lawyer who owed her a favor. She read the letter, sighed, and said, "Give me an hour." Her response was surgical. She stated that the utilities had been in my name, and I had terminated them upon moving out fully within my rights. The equipment belonged to Johnny and remained in the apartment untouched. Lost income from a hobby generating $0 was not compensable, and truth, she reminded them, was an absolute defense against defamation. Then she added one final line that made my chest feel lighter for the first time in weeks. "We are also evaluating whether to pursue criminal charges for the unauthorized transfer of $8,000 from my client's personal savings account." Johnny's lawyer went silent after that. Johnny did not. He started showing up places, not in a scary restraining order kind of way, just pathetic. The coffee shop near my sister's house, the grocery store, once outside my workplace, standing by my car like he'd been waiting. That time I confronted him. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I just want to talk," he said. "You won't answer my calls." "Because we have nothing to talk about," I replied. "You stole from me. We're done." "I made a mistake," he said. "People make mistakes." "That wasn't a mistake," I said. "That was a choice." He shook his head, voice cracking. "You're really going to throw away 4 years over money." "Over trust," I corrected. "You just used money to break it," he cried in the parking lot. A small part of me felt bad. The rest of me remembered logging into my bank account and seeing that transfer. "I have nothing now," he said. "No job, no streaming career, no you. I'm sleeping on my buddy's couch. My mom thinks I'm a failure." "Then maybe use this time to reflect on how you got here," I said. I got in my car and drove away. A few days later, his sister reached out. She asked to meet for coffee, said she wasn't there to advocate for him, just wanted to understand. I agreed. I shouldn't have. Within 10 minutes, it was clear this wasn't curiosity, it was an intervention. "He's really struggling," she said. Like, not eating, not sleeping. His mental health is in a bad place. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said honestly, "but it's not my responsibility anymore." She frowned. "Don't you think you were a little harsh? The power thing was pretty brutal." "You know what's brutal," I said quietly. "Working for 3 years to save money and having someone you trust take it overnight." "He was going to pay you back," she insisted. "With what I asked. Imaginary streaming income." She tried every angle after that: love, loyalty, sacrifice, forgiveness. Then she said the one thing that snapped the last thread of patience I had left. "Maybe you're being a little materialistic." I stared at her. "Wanting my own money back isn't materialism," I said. "It's self-respect." She left angry. I didn't stop her. A week later, the consequences finally caught up to Johnny in ways even his family couldn't spin. His buddy kicked him out. Apparently, Johnny hadn't been contributing to bills, hadn't been cleaning, and had been asking repeatedly to use their Wi-Fi to stream. His buddy's girlfriend put her foot down. He had to go. Johnny moved back into the apartment. He'd managed to get the power and internet turned on in his name. But here's the thing about putting utilities in your own name. You have to pay for them. And Johnny had no income. Johnny tried to make a comeback. That's what he called it anyway. He posted about it on Twitter, something vague about taking time to reset and coming back stronger. He went live a few nights later after finally scraping together enough money to keep the power on for another week. 12 people showed up. Not 1,200, not even 100. 12. According to a mutual friend who couldn't resist updating me, the stream was bleak. Johnny spent most of it ranting about toxic relationships and people who don't support your dreams. The chat barely moved. No new subscriptions, no donations, no hype. The algorithm had moved on, and so had his audience. Dreams built on borrowed money don't survive reality very long. A few days after that, his mom called me again. This time her voice was different, quieter, tired. "I know we haven't agreed on much," she said, "but I think you deserve to know something." I braced myself. He pawned some of the equipment, she continued. The monitors, the chair, a few other things. He got about $1,800 for it. I closed my eyes. "The equipment he bought with my money," I said. "Yes," she admitted. "He used it for rent and the electric bill." There was a pause. "I think," she said carefully, "that he owes you that money, at least what he got from selling it." It was the most reasonable thing she'd said since this all started. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied, "but I'm not holding my breath." She told me he'd started applying for warehouse jobs again. Different company, lower pay, that she'd make sure he paid me back monthly if he could. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't believe her, not really, but something had shifted. The fantasy was cracking. Even she could see it now. About a week later, I stopped waiting and started acting. I filed a police report. Not because I thought he'd be hauled away in handcuffs. Not because I wanted revenge. I did it for documentation, for a paper trail, in case Johnny ever tried to claim the money was a gift, or that I'd agreed to it. The officer was honest with me. Cases like this between former partners were messy. The transfer was unauthorized. Yes, but proving theft versus shared finances in criminal court was complicated. He suggested civil court instead. So I filed in small claims. $8,000. No lawyers required. Just me, my evidence, and the truth. Johnny was served at his buddy's place again. According to the server's notes, he read the papers, blinked, and said, "Are you kidding me?" "No, Johnny, I wasn't." He didn't show up for the first court date. The judge wasn't impressed. The hearing was rescheduled, and a warning was issued, fail to appear again, and a default judgment would be entered. The second time he showed, he looked rough, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing a wrinkled button-down that clearly wasn't his. When the judge asked him if he disputed the transfer, his answer was shaky. "No, Your Honor," he said. "I transferred the money. But we were in a relationship. I thought it was shared." The judge asked a few simple questions. "Was there a written agreement?" "No." "Did she verbally consent?" "No." "Was my name on his account?" "No." "Was his name on mine?" "No." When it was my turn, I handed over my bank statements, the screenshots of his texts admitting he took the money, everything I'd saved in that folder. The judge ruled in my favor. Full amount, plus court costs. $8.47 total. Johnny looked like he was going to be sick. "I don't have that money," he said quietly. "I'm unemployed." The judge didn't blink. "Then I suggest you find employment," she said. "This judgment is enforceable for 20 years. I won. But winning, I learned, isn't always the same as collecting. Getting a judgment and collecting on it are two very different things. Johnny did eventually find work again. Another warehouse, different company, lower pay, no benefits for the first few months. His mom hadn't lied about that. But he was also behind on everything: rent, car payments, credit cards. There was no dramatic paycheck where my money suddenly reappeared. And strangely, that stopped mattering. The judgment wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the record, about a court looking at what happened and saying this was wrong. That mattered more to me than a bank balance. A few weeks after the court date, I heard through mutual friends that Johnny had finally given up on streaming entirely. Sold the PC to cover rent. The rest of the dream quietly died, not with a bang, but with overdue bills and empty chat rooms. It wasn't something I celebrated. It just was. Then came the apology letter from his mother, an actual letter handwritten. She said she was sorry for how she'd spoken to me, that her protectiveness of her son had blinded her to his actions, that she hoped I could move on and find happiness. It was sincere. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. It's still in a drawer somewhere. Johnny's sister never reached out again. A few weeks after that, I got one final message from Johnny himself. It came through email since I'd blocked him everywhere else. He wrote that he knew I probably wouldn't respond, but that he needed to say something anyway. He apologized not in the way he had before with excuses and deflection, but directly, for taking the money without asking, for seeing me as a resource instead of a partner, for convincing himself that his dreams justified his behavior. He said he understood now. I read it 3 times. Part of me wanted to reply, to say thank you for finally getting it, to wish him well, to close the loop neatly. I didn't. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. I moved into my own place not long after that. A small studio apartment, nothing fancy, but it's mine. Lease in my name, utilities in my name, every decision mine. I started rebuilding my savings, slowly. I'm only at about $1,200 so far, but it's a start. And this time every dollar feels protected. People ask me if I regret how I handled it. The power cutting midstream, the dramatic exit, the fallout. Honestly, no. Johnny showed me exactly who he was the moment he took that money. He showed me that his dreams mattered more than my security, that his ambition outweighed my autonomy, that in his mind, what was mine was already his. All I did was refuse to keep funding that belief. The screen going black during his stream wasn't me destroying his career. It was me withdrawing my consent. There's a difference. I'm not dating anyone right now. Trust will take time to rebuild, not with someone else, but with myself. I ignored too many red flags because I wanted to believe in the version of him I loved. That's on me, and I'm learning from it. If there's one thing I hope anyone reading this takes away, it's this: you are never obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else's dreams warm, especially when those dreams are built on your silence and your savings. This chapter is closed. My name is Ellen Newberry, and I was 31 years old when I learned how quiet a breakup can be when you finally stop fighting it. The text came the night before our vacation. No warning, no build-up, no argument beforehand that might have softened the blow. I've been thinking a lot. I need a break from us. Some space. Please don't contact me for a while. I'll reach out when I'm ready. I was sitting on the edge of my bed. Suitcase open, half my clothes folded neatly. The other half still scattered across the room like evidence of a life I thought was stable. We had been planning this trip for over 6 months, 7 days at an all-inclusive resort, ocean views, spa reservations, sunset dinners. I'd saved just over $4,000 to cover both flights and the resort package. I'd requested time off months in advance. I'd packed his favorite linen shirts into garment sleeves so they wouldn't wrinkle. I read the message 3 times, slowly, carefully, as if maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder. They didn't. I didn't cry. I didn't type a paragraph asking what I did wrong. I didn't call him. I didn't beg. I just stared at the wall for 10 full minutes, listening to the hum of my ceiling fan, feeling something in me go very still. Then I typed back 1 word. Okay, that was it. After that, I got to work. The airline call came first. I explained that I needed to cancel 1 passenger on the reservation. The agent was polite, professional, sympathetic. There were fees, of course there were, but I recovered about 60% of his ticket as credit. Not ideal, not devastating either. Next, the resort. The booking was under my name. He was listed as my guest. I told them my travel companion had canceled and that I'd be arriving alone. There was a pause on the line, then a soft, almost apologetic tone. They adjusted the reservation to single occupancy. Same room, same dates, just me. Finally, I called my friend who was supposed to check on my apartment while we were gone. I told her the plan hadn't changed. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. I finished packing, zipped the suitcase, set my alarm, and went to bed. Sleep came surprisingly easily. The next morning, I arrived at the airport early, checked in, passed through security, grabbed a coffee, and found my gate. I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone when I saw him. My boyfriend still. My boyfriend at that point, walking through the terminal with the bright blue suitcase I'd bought him for his birthday last year. He was wearing the white button-down he'd ordered specifically for this trip, the one he said made him feel confident. He looked relaxed, happy. Then he saw me. His smile widened. He waved. He practically jogged toward me, arms already opening for a hug. Surprise, he said brightly. I bet you thought I was serious. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I just looked at him. His arms dropped slowly. What he asked, confusion creeping into his voice. Babe, why don't you look happy? You texted me yesterday, I said evenly. You said you needed a break. You told me not to contact you. He laughed, a short, nervous sound. That was a test. I wanted to see if you'd fight for me. But then I realized I was being stupid, so I decided to surprise you instead. He was still smiling like this was a story we'd laugh about later. Aren't you happy to see me? Not particularly. The color drained from his face. What? You said you wanted space, I continued. So I gave it to you. I canceled your ticket last night. Changed the resort reservation. I'm going alone. His phone was already in his hand, fingers tapping frantically at the airline app. I watched his expression collapse in real time. It says canceled, he whispered. This has to be a mistake. It's not. You can't do this to me, he said, voice rising. I took time off work. I packed. I stood up, slung my carry-on over my shoulder, and stepped around him as boarding was announced. You wanted a break, I said calmly. Enjoy it. Behind me, his voice cracked into something loud and desperate. People started staring. I didn't turn around. When the gate agent scanned my boarding pass, she glanced up at me. Rough morning. It's getting better, I said. She smiled softly and waved me through. As I walked down the jetway, the noise of the terminal faded away. The aircraft hummed. The air felt still. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. I found my window seat extra legroom because if I was flying solo, I was doing it right and buckled in. When the plane door closed, I exhaled. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment everything changed. I didn't turn my phone on until the plane had already leveled out the seatbelt sign, chiming off with a soft, indifferent ding. When I finally did, it vibrated so violently in my hand that I almost dropped it. Missed calls, messages, voicemails stacking on top of one another like accusations. His name over and over again, broken up by numbers I didn't recognize yet, but would soon come to understand belonged to his family. I stared at the screen for a moment, felt the familiar pull to engage, to explain, to soothe, to fix, and then I powered the phone off again. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. As clouds passed beneath the window, my mind did what it always did. When things slowed down, it replayed the past. Not the highlight reel, but the patterns. The moments I'd brushed aside because they were easier to excuse than confront. The first test had come early in our relationship, back when I still believed love was something you proved by reacting correctly. He'd stormed out of a minor argument over nothing what to eat for dinner, I think, and waited in his car for almost an hour to see if I'd chase him. When I didn't, he came back furious, accusing me of not caring enough. I apologized then. I always did back then. There were others. Times he'd mention an ex-girlfriend casually watching my face for a reaction. Days he'd go cold and distant, answering texts with one-word replies, waiting to see how long it took before I asked what was wrong. I learned the rules without ever being told them. Panic meant love. Jealousy meant passion. Discomfort meant commitment. Calm, on the other hand, was suspicious. Calm meant I didn't care. Every invisible test I failed became proof that something was wrong with me. About 8 months in, he told me he was thinking about moving back to his hometown, not because he wanted to, but because he wanted to see what I'd say. I remember responding thoughtfully, telling him it was a big decision and that I'd support whatever made him happy. He cried that night, not because he was sad about leaving, but because I hadn't begged him to stay. We spent hours circling the same argument, him insisting he just wanted reassurance, me apologizing for not performing love loudly enough. By the time the plane touched down, my chest felt tight, but not from heartbreak, from recognition. The vacation wasn't the first test, it was just the biggest one yet. The resort was beautiful in that unreal, postcard-perfect way. White stone floors, open-air hallways, staff smiling like they'd been trained to absorb emotional fallout without flinching. When I checked in alone, the receptionist hesitated, then gently asked if I was expecting anyone else. I shook my head. Just me. Something softened in her expression. A few minutes later, she told me they'd upgraded my room due to availability. Ocean view, full balcony. Sometimes the universe doesn't whisper, it compensates. The first night I left my phone off. I walked along the beach barefoot, let the waves numb my ankles, ate dinner alone without apologizing to anyone for it. I went to bed early, exhausted in a way that felt earned. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains like an invitation. On the second day, reality crept back in. I turned my phone on while sitting by the pool drink, sweating onto the table beside me. The messages flooded in immediately. Anger, apologies, accusations, declarations of love. His mother's name appeared more than once, his sister too. I didn't open most of them. I didn't need to. I'd lived this cycle enough times to know how it went. What I didn't expect was the message that arrived a few hours later from a name I barely recognized, someone I'd met once or twice at his office parties. A coworker. The tone was hesitant, almost guilty. I don't know if I should be telling you this. It began, but I think you deserve to know. He was telling people at work that he was going on this trip with someone else, an ex-girlfriend he met again at a conference last month. He said you paid for everything and he was just swapping things around. Then I guess she backed out last minute. Now he's telling everyone you abandoned him. I read it once, then again and again. The pool noise faded. The laughter around me blurred into something distant and hollow. This wasn't a test. This wasn't about seeing if I'd fight for him. The break text wasn't emotional manipulation, it was logistics. He'd been clearing space for someone else. When that plan collapsed, he'd tried to slide back into the version of the story where I was still useful. I saved the message, took a slow sip of my drink, felt something final settle into place. For the first time in 2.5 years, there was no confusion left, only clarity. And clarity, I was learning, was far more powerful than anger. I didn't respond to the coworker right away. I just sat there by the pool, the sun warm on my shoulders, the weight of 2.5 years pressing down on me all at once. The thing about the truth is that it doesn't always arrive with drama. Sometimes it shows up quietly, lines up every memory you've been trying not to connect, and then steps back to let you see the full picture on your own. I thought about all the times he'd accused me of being emotionally distant, all the arguments where I'd ended up apologizing for not reacting strongly enough, not being jealous enough, not being dramatic enough to satisfy whatever invisible metric he was using that week. I thought about how often I'd tried to adjust myself, my tone, my reactions, my instincts, just to keep the peace. And now here it was, spelled out plainly by someone who had no reason to lie to me. The tests, the tension, the break. None of it was about emotional reassurance. It was about convenience. I finally replied to the coworker with a simple thank you. No follow-up questions. No fishing for more details. I didn't need them. The damage was already complete. When I turned my phone back on later that night, the messages from my ex had multiplied. They swung wildly between rage and regret, often within the same hour. He accused me of humiliating him, then begged me to call, then blamed me for forcing him into looking like the bad guy. His mother left voicemails I didn't listen to. His sister sent long texts about loyalty and how I'd embarrassed their family publicly. Apparently, after I walked away at the gate, he'd had a full meltdown, crying, yelling at airline staff, insisting there'd been a mistake. Security had eventually escorted him out of the terminal. Not arrested, just removed. His sister had driven 2 hours to pick him up. The story they told everyone was that I'd abandoned him without warning. I didn't correct them. People who lie confidently assume you'll scramble to defend yourself. I didn't. I stayed by the pool, ordered another drink, and let the truth sit where it belonged inside me. The next morning, I woke up to a message that surprised me. His best friend. One of the few people in his life I'd always gotten along with. The tone was careful, measured. I've heard his side, it read, but I also know his patterns. Whatever happened, I hope you're okay. Don't feel pressured to respond. I stared at that message for a long time. It felt like a lifeline, not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me that not everyone buys the loudest version of a story. Then came the confirmation I didn't realize I was still bracing for. Another message from the coworker. Update it began. The conference guy told him it was never that serious. He misread the situation. HR had to talk to him today because he's been emotional at work. Just thought you should know. I laughed then, out loud. A short, incredulous sound that startled the couple sitting a few chairs away from me. The man he'd been planning to replace me with hadn't even wanted him. He'd torched a 2.5-year relationship for a fantasy that didn't exist. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That night I blocked his number, then his mother's, then his sister's. I didn't make a speech. I didn't announce my departure. I just closed the door quietly and ordered room service. The sunset from my balcony bled orange and pink across the ocean, and for the first time since the trip began, I cried, not from loss, but from relief. 2.5 years of chasing, fixing, proving, apologizing. 2.5 years of emotional labor mistaken for love. And now finally there was nothing left to misunderstand. The bartender by the pool asked if I was traveling alone. I gave him the short version. He shook his head, slid me a drink on the house, and said, "Sounds like you dodged something." I raised my glass to the ocean. I hadn't just dodged it. I'd walked away from it. I finished the vacation the way I started it, alone, unbothered, and slowly learning what it felt like to exist without bracing for someone else's emotional weather. I swam. I read. I let myself enjoy long stretches of quiet without reaching for my phone. By the time I packed to come home, the anger had cooled into something steadier. Resolve. That illusion of calm didn't survive my return. On the 5th day of my trip, my friend, the one checking on my apartment, texted me, "Hey, your ex is outside your door. He's been there for almost an hour, crying. What do you want me to do?" My stomach tightened, but not in the way it used to. Not panic, annoyance. I told her not to engage with him directly and to call the building manager if he didn't leave. He wasn't on the lease. He'd never lived there. He didn't have the right to turn my hallway into a stage. According to her, a neighbor eventually complained about the noise. He left after nearly 2 hours of knocking, crying, and pacing like a performance meant for an audience that refused to show up. When I landed back home, there was a letter taped neatly to my door. 4 pages, handwritten. The highlights jumped out immediately. "I made the biggest mistake of my life. The other woman meant nothing. You ruined our vacation over a misunderstanding. My therapist says you have avoidant attachment." I read it once, folded it carefully, put it in a drawer I knew I'd eventually empty. What followed was a week of escalation disguised as concern. His mother finally left a voicemail accusing me of financial abuse for canceling the ticket I'd paid for. She threatened lawyers if I didn't reimburse her son for his half of the vacation money he'd never contributed. I laughed when I heard it. Actually laughed. There's something almost impressive about that level of audacity. His sister tried a different tactic. She tracked down my older brother's contact information and called him to express concern about my mental state. My brother listened patiently, then told her I seemed perfectly relaxed in the vacation photos I'd sent, and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The email arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. Subject line: invoice, outstanding balance. It was a PDF, professionally formatted, line items and all. Emotional distress, $500, lost wages from missed work, $320, Uber home from airport, $85, suitcase damage, during removal from terminal $200. Total due $1.05, payment deadline included, late fees listed. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for the punchline that never came. The suitcase damage was particularly rich. The suitcase was a gift I'd bought him. Now he was billing me for its scuff marks. I forwarded the invoice to a lawyer friend. His response came back in under 5 minutes. "Not enforceable. At all. This is laughable." I screenshot that and sent it back to my ex without commentary. His reply was a string of crying emojis followed by, "I can't believe you're being this cold. We were supposed to get married someday." I didn't respond. The escalation had finally crossed from emotional to absurd, and absurdity has a way of killing any lingering guilt. I wasn't cruel, I was done. I thought the invoice would be the peak of the insanity. I really did. In my mind, nothing could possibly top the audacity of sending a professionally formatted bill for being broken up with. It felt like something out of a dark comedy, so over the top it bordered on parody. But the thing about people who are used to control is that they don't stop when the tactic fails. They escalate. A few days after the invoice went unanswered, I got a message from the same coworker who'd first warned me. Short, almost apologetic. "Just a heads up. He's telling people at work that you cheated on him, and that's why you went on the trip alone." Most people aren't buying it. HR pulled him aside again. Of course he was. When you can't rewrite reality, you invent a new one. One where you're the victim and everyone else is cruel, unreasonable, heartless. One where consequences are someone else's fault. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post screenshots. I didn't correct the narrative. Anyone who mattered already knew the truth or would figure it out soon enough. Lies require maintenance. The truth just waits. Then came the email follow-up. Polite, almost businesslike. Just checking in regarding the outstanding balance. I really don't want to pursue legal options, but I will if I have to. I deleted it without replying. That should have been my cue that silence was working. Instead, it became his reason to try something bolder. The call from reception at my office came mid-morning the following week. "There's a man here asking for you," the receptionist said carefully. "He says he's your boyfriend. He seems upset. Should I send him up?" My chest tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "No, I'll come down. If I give you a signal, call security." When I reached the lobby, he was sitting in one of the waiting chairs, head in his hands. He looked smaller somehow, thinner. His usually polished appearance had slipped wrinkled shirt hair, pulled back messily, eyes red and unfocused. For half a second, instinct kicked in. The old urge to comfort, to smooth things over, to fix. Then I remembered the invoice. "Can we talk?" he asked when he saw me. "We can talk here," I said. 5 minutes. He glanced around at the security camera, the receptionist, a few employees pretending very hard not to watch. He hated having an audience. That alone told me everything I needed to know. "I made a mistake," he said quickly. "The thing with the other woman, it was nothing. I got caught up in attention. You're the one I love. You asked for a break the day before our trip so you could bring someone else on a vacation I paid for," I replied calmly. "I talked to your coworker. I know the plan." His face went pale. "Who told you that?" "Doesn't matter." He started crying then, loud, unrestrained. Heads turned. I stayed still. "You can't throw away 2.5 years," he said between sobs. "I'm not," I said. "You already did. I'm just acknowledging it. I'll do therapy, couples counseling, anything. What I want," I said, "is for you to leave and stop contacting me. You're being cruel. I'm being clear." For a moment, he just stood there waiting for me to break, to chase, to prove something one last time. I didn't. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard it made the receptionist jump. When he was gone, my coworker, who'd definitely been pretending to check her phone, looked up. "You okay?" I nodded. And for the first time, I meant it. I thought the scene at my office would be the end of it. Public, firm, undeniable. The kind of ending you can't pretend didn't happen. And for a while it was quiet. Too quiet. A few days later, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something in me, curiosity, maybe answered. It was his father. He'd always been the quiet one, the reasonable one, the man who stayed out of the drama while his wife and son spun narratives around him. His voice was tired low, like someone who had been carrying other people's chaos for decades. "I'm not calling to ask you to take him back," he said gently. "I just wanted you to know. He's struggling." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, and I meant it. "But I can't be the one who fixes this anymore." There was a pause, then a sigh. "I understand," he said. "He's always been like this. The games, the testing. His mother does the same thing to me. I've tried to talk to him about it, but..." His voice trailed off. "I just wanted to say I appreciate how calm you've been through all of this." That call stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because it changed anything, but because it confirmed something I'd been slowly realizing. This wasn't a temporary flaw. This was a system, a family dynamic that fed on emotional chaos and mistook intensity for intimacy. After that, the threats stopped. No lawyers, no invoices, no dramatic emails, just silence. My lawyer friend wasn't surprised. "People who actually have legal ground don't warn you," he told me. "They just act. Threats are usually a bluff." He was right. The coworker sent one last update a week later. My ex had been telling people at work that I cheated on him and abandoned him at the airport as punishment for asking for space. Almost no one believed it. HR had spoken to him again. He was on thin ice. I closed the message and didn't respond. I didn't need updates anymore. Stop! Part 7, After the Noise. Life didn't dramatically improve overnight. There was no movie-style montage where everything suddenly made sense and happiness wrapped itself neatly around me. What came instead was quieter and far more real. I started therapy. Not couples counseling, just me. Sitting in a small room once a week, unraveling why I'd stayed as long as I did, why I mistook being calm for being wrong, why I kept chasing someone who only felt loved when I was uncomfortable. My therapist had a word for it: trauma bonding. I called it habit. Habits, it turns out, can be broken. I learned how easily I'd prioritize someone else's emotions over my own boundaries. How often I'd ignored my instincts because they didn't match the drama I'd been told love was supposed to look like. We worked on recognizing red flags earlier, on understanding that love doesn't require constant proof. That peace isn't boredom, it's safety. The vacation photos are still on my phone. Me on the beach. Me by the pool. Me eating an incredible steak dinner alone, smiling without checking my phone every 5 minutes. They're proof. Proof that I can be happy by myself. Proof that I don't need chaos to feel connected. Proof that walking away wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. Was it petty to cancel his ticket and change the reservation? Maybe. Do I regret it? Not for a second. He asked for space. I gave it to him. The fact that he didn't mean it isn't my responsibility. Some people play games. Some people call the bluff. This time I called it. And for the first time in a long time, I chose myself. My name is Julie Clarkson. I'm 29 years old, and I got the call at 11:43 p.m. on a Thursday night, the kind of hour where nothing good ever comes from an unknown number lighting up your phone. I was already in bed. The apartment was quiet. the kind of quiet that comes after a long day when even the walls feel tired. Darren, my boyfriend of 18 months, was asleep beside me, one arm thrown lazily across my waist, breathing slow and even. I just slipped out of bed to grab a glass of water when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name, Mark Reynolds, Darren's best friend. That alone was strange. Mark had never called me directly before. We weren't close like that. Cordial, yes. Friendly in group settings. Polite texts about birthdays or plans, but never a one-on-one late-night phone call. My stomach tightened. I answered quietly and stepped into the hallway, lowering my voice instinctively. Hello. What came through the speaker wasn't words, it was sobbing. Loud, broken, messy sobbing. The kind that makes your chest ache just listening to it. I'm so sorry, Mark choked out. I didn't want to be the one to tell you. I really didn't. But I can't keep watching this happen to you. My heart dropped into my stomach. Mark, what are you talking about? A sharp inhale, another sob. He's cheating on you. The hallway felt suddenly too small, too dark. What? I have proof, he rushed on, voice shaking. Photos. I've had them for weeks. I didn't know what to do. But you're such a good person, Julie. You don't deserve this. I leaned against the wall, my hand flat against the cool paint, trying to slow my breathing. Darren would never. I wish that were true, Mark said softly. I really do. But I wouldn't lie about something like this. There it was. The sentence that cracked something open in my chest. Send them, I said. There was a pause. Are you sure they're pretty bad? Send them. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. 12 photos. I sat on the floor and scrolled through them one by one. Darren with another woman, her sitting on his lap at a bar, his arm around her shoulders, their faces close, laughing. One photo showed them walking into what looked like a hotel lobby together. It felt like watching someone else's life fall apart. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't run back into the bedroom and shake him awake like every instinct in my body wanted me to. Instead, I stared at the photos until my hands stopped shaking. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. My voice sounded distant, even to me. I need time to process this. I'm here for you, Mark said quickly. Whatever you need. I know. I hung up, went back to bed, and lay there beside the man I loved, staring at his face in the dim light, the familiar lines, the soft crease between his brows, the steady rise and fall of his chest. The photos replayed behind my eyes over and over again. But beneath the shock, beneath the hurt, something else stirred. A quiet, insistent thought. Something wasn't right. And that feeling was the only thing keeping me from breaking apart. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of shallow, half-dreams, my mind looping the same images over and over until they lost their sharpness and became something else entirely, puzzles instead of wounds. Darren woke up before me just after 7. He kissed my forehead like he always did, murmured that he'd make coffee, and padded toward the kitchen without any idea that my entire reality had tilted on its axis a few hours earlier. I watched him go, my chest tight, my heart still racing, but now layered over the panic was a strange calm, a cold focus, the kind that shows up when your instincts refuse to accept what your eyes are being shown. After he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and my phone, sunlight creeping slowly across the floor. I pulled the photos back up, really looked at them this time. At first glance, they were convincing. Anyone would think so. That was the point. But the longer I stared, the more details began to whisper instead of scream. Darren's hair. In the photos, it was shorter. Not dramatically, but enough that it caught my attention. When we met, he'd already been growing it out for months. I remembered teasing him about the awkward phase, the way it kept falling into his eyes. In the photos, that phase was gone. His hair was clean-cut styled the way he used to wear it years ago, based on old pictures I'd seen. Then there was the bar. I zoomed in on the background. Neon sign. Dark wood paneling, a mural behind the counter. It wasn't anywhere we went now. We were creatures of habit, same 3 places, same bartenders who already knew our orders. I'd never seen that bar before. My pulse slowed just slightly. I moved on to the woman. Her dress style screamed a different era. The makeup, too. Bold liner matte lipstick. Trends shift fast, but not that fast. And then I noticed her nails bright blue with tiny stars. I froze. Darren had shown me an old picture once, laughing about how his ex had gone through a galaxy nail art phase in her mid-20s. He'd said it like a throwaway comment. At the time, I hadn't thought twice about it. Now I was thinking about it a lot. I swallowed and checked the file details. I'm not some tech wizard, but I know enough to be dangerous. I downloaded the images, right-clicked, and opened the metadata. Date taken November 14th. 3 years and 4 months ago. I stared at the screen, my breath caught halfway in. 3 years and 4 months ago, Darren and I didn't even know each other existed. We met a year and a half ago at a mutual friend's birthday party in March. I remembered the night clearly, how he'd spilled a drink on my shoes and insisted on buying me another round as an apology. How easy it had felt from the start. I checked the next photo. Same weekend. Another. Same. All 12 images were from the same time frame. Different angles, different moments, but all locked firmly in a past that predated me entirely. I leaned back in my chair and let out a shaky laugh that quickly turned into something close to a sob. Darren wasn't cheating on me. He had dated someone before me. That was it. That was the crime. Which meant the real question wasn't what had he done. It was why had Mark lied. I thought back to the phone call, the sobbing, the urgency, the way he'd framed it like a moral dilemma he'd struggled with for weeks, the way he'd said, "I can't watch this happen to you anymore." It hadn't sounded rehearsed, but it had sounded practiced. I did something next that I'm not proud of, but I don't regret either. I opened Mark's social media and started scrolling. Not just recent posts, not just last year. I went back years back, screenshots piling up in a folder on my desktop as I went. Cryptic captions, vague heartbreak quotes, posts about timing missed chances watching someone choose the wrong person. 3 years ago, right around the time those photos were taken, the tone was dark, bitter. Long stretches of silence broken by dramatic declarations about loyalty and being invisible. Then about 6 months before Darren and I met, the tone shifted. Hopeful. New chapter energy. Sometimes the universe clears the path, letting go of what doesn't serve you. My skin prickled. I kept going until I found it. A group photo from 2 years ago. Darren, a few friends, Mark standing close. Too close. In the comments, someone had joked, "Still waiting for you to make a move, man." Mark had replied with a laughing emoji and 3 words that made my stomach drop. Timing is everything. I closed the laptop slowly. The truth settled in my chest, heavy and undeniable. Mark hadn't called me out of concern. He'd called because he'd been waiting for this moment for years, and when it became clear that Darren and I weren't a phase, he decided to manufacture an ending. I looked at my phone. A new message lit up the screen. "How are you holding up? Have you talked to him yet? I'm here if you need anything." I didn't respond. Not yet. Because now I wasn't reacting. I was planning. I didn't confront Darren right away. I know how that sounds. Most people would have woken their partner up the moment doubt crossed their mind. Demanded answers, demanded reassurance, demanded the truth. But I needed more than reassurance. I needed certainty. Because if I was wrong, if I let myself believe Mark's story for even a second, I would be handing him exactly what he wanted. So I waited. For 2 days, I watched Darren like someone relearning a familiar language. I paid attention to the small things, the way he checked in during the day, the way he still reached for my hand when we crossed the street, the way he talked about us without hesitation, without guilt. There was no nervousness, no distance, no slip in behavior that suggested a man hiding something. But Mark couldn't help himself. He texted me constantly. "Any updates? I hate that you're going through this. You deserve so much better than being lied to." Every message felt like a push, a nudge toward the explosion he was waiting for. On the second night after dinner, I asked Darren if we could talk. He noticed the tone immediately. His shoulders tensed just slightly as we sat on the couch. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "You've been kind of quiet." I took a breath, steadying myself. "Mark called me Thursday night," I said. "He told me you were cheating on me." The color drained from his face. What? His voice cracked. Disbelief, sharp and immediate. "Julie, that's insane. I would never." "I know," I said, gently lifting a hand before he could spiral. "I know because the photos he sent me are from more than 3 years ago, before we even met." He froze. "Photos," he echoed. I showed him. He stared at the screen, his confusion deepening with every image. Then his eyes widened with recognition. That's my ex," he said slowly. "Those were taken when we were dating. How did he even get these?" That question hung between us, heavy and loaded. "I was hoping you could tell me," I said. Darren grabbed his phone, scrolling furiously. His jaw tightened as he pieced it together. "He was there that weekend," he muttered. "We all were. He took some of these. I remember because my phone camera was broken, and he said he'd send them to me later." He looked up at me, something breaking in his expression. "He kept them," he said, "for years." And suddenly it all clicked into place. I showed him everything. The old posts, the comments, the pattern of behavior, the messages he'd sent me since the call. Darren read through it all in silence, his hands trembling slightly. When he finally looked up, his eyes were glassy. "He's been my best friend since college," he said quietly. 8 years. I told him everything. About you. About how serious this is. About how I think you might be the one. I swallowed. That might be why he did it now. Darren stood up, pacing. Anger, hurt, betrayal, all of it warring across his face. "He tried to destroy my relationship," he said. Because he's in love with you," I said softly. The words landed hard. Darren stopped pacing. He ran a hand through his hair, disbelief giving way to something darker. "No," he said. "He knows I'm straight. He's always known." "Feelings don't always care about that," I replied. He sank back onto the couch, staring at the floor. "I need to confront him," he said finally. "I need to hear him admit it." "Not yet," I said. He looked up at me, surprised. "I have an idea," I continued. "But you need to trust me." There was a long pause. Then Darren nodded. "I do," he said. "Whatever you think is best." That trust, fragile, powerful, settled something inside me. I picked up my phone and typed out a message I knew would hook Mark immediately. "Can we meet? I haven't told Darren yet. I need advice on how to handle this." The reply came back in under 5 seconds. "Of course, I'm here for you. Coffee tomorrow." I stared at the screen, my resolve hardening. Mark thought he was in control. By this time tomorrow, he wouldn't be. Mark suggested a cafe near the park. Public casual, the kind of place people choose when they want to look harmless. I agreed immediately. What he didn't know was that Darren and I had already planned every detail. The cafe had large front windows and an indoor seating area that looked directly onto the outdoor tables. The plan was simple. I would sit outside with Mark. Darren would be inside, close enough to hear, close enough to see recording everything. On Sunday afternoon, I arrived early. Darren was already inside when I walked past the window, his posture tense, but controlled his phone, resting face down on the table in front of him. He didn't look at me. That was part of it, too. No tells, no cracks. Mark showed up 5 minutes late. He looked concerned in a way that felt rehearsed. Soft eyes, furrowed brow. Sympathetic tilt of the head. The perfect performance of a man burdened by truth. "Julie," he said, pulling out the chair across from me. "How are you holding up?" I let my shoulders slump just enough to sell it. "Not great," I admitted. "I can't stop looking at the photos." He nodded gravely. "I've figured. I hate that you're going through this." "I keep wondering how long it's been going on," I said quietly. How he could look me in the eye and lie. Mark leaned forward. "That's what hurts the most," he said. "The lying." I swallowed, then looked up at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How did you get the photos?" There it was. The tiniest hesitation, a flicker of calculation behind his eyes. "He showed them to me," Mark said smoothly. "He was drunk. Bragging, actually. Said you were clueless." My stomach turned, not because I believed him, but because of how easily the lie came out. "When was this?" I asked. "About a month ago." I nodded slowly. "That's interesting." His brow creased. "Why?" "Because the photos were taken 3 years ago," I said. "The metadata confirms it." For a split second, his mask slipped. What he said too quickly. "The woman in the photos is Darren's ex," I continued calmly. "They broke up over 2 years ago. He's engaged now, actually. Lives in another state." That can't be right," Mark stammered. "He told me." "He didn't tell you anything," I interrupted. "You were there when those photos were taken. You took some of them yourself." Silence. "I can see your reflection in the window in one of them," I added. "Photo number 7. His jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Yes, you do," I replied. "You saved photos from his past relationship. Then you sent them to me, framing them as proof of current cheating. You cried on the phone, pretended to be torn up about telling me when in reality you were just trying to break us up." He scoffed. "That's ridiculous. Why would I do that?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because you're in love with him. You have been for years. And when it became clear that he wasn't going to end up single again, when you realized I wasn't temporary, you panicked." His face hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," I said. "I've seen your posts, the comments from your friends, the timing of everything. You've been waiting for him to choose you." Mark stood abruptly, chair scraping against the pavement. "This is insane," he snapped. "I was trying to help you. You were trying to destroy his relationship so you could step in." I nodded toward the cafe window. "Look inside." He turned, and there was Darren, standing just inside the glass phone, raised recording everything. His face was pale, his expression a mixture of heartbreak and resolve. The color drained from Mark's face, and in that moment, the truth finally had nowhere left to hide. For a second, Mark just stood there, frozen, staring through the glass like he'd seen a ghost. Then Darren stepped outside. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He moved with a calm that felt heavier than anger ever could. He stopped beside me, his presence solid grounding, and held his phone up slightly so Mark could see the screen still recording. "Say it again," Darren said quietly. "Everything you just told her." Mark's mouth opened, closed. His eyes darted between us, searching for an exit that didn't exist. "This is a setup," he snapped finally. "You tricked me." "No," I said. "You lied. We just stopped pretending." Mark laughed a sharp, brittle sound. "You don't understand," he said, turning to Darren. "She's twisting this. You know me. You know I'd never hurt you." Darren looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time. "I know you kept photos of my ex for years," Darren said. "I know you sent them to my girlfriend and told her I was cheating. I know you watched her almost fall apart because you wanted me single." Mark's composure cracked. "I was trying to protect you," he shot back. "She's not right for you." Darren's jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide that." "I've been there for you longer than she has," Mark burst out. Heads turned at nearby tables. "I've loved you for 8 years, and you never even looked at me like that." There it was. The truth finally stripped bare. Darren exhaled slowly. "I'm straight," he said. "You've always known that." "Feelings don't care about that," Mark shouted. "I thought if you just saw that relationships with women don't last, if I could show you how much I care." "So your plan was to break my heart," I said, "and hope he'd run to you afterward." Mark looked at me with something close to hatred. "It sounds worse when you say it like that." "That's because it is worse," Darren replied. "It's manipulative, it's cruel, and it ends now." Mark's voice dropped, turned venomous. "You're choosing her over 8 years of friendship." "Yes," Darren said without hesitation. "I am." Mark's face twisted. "You'll regret this. She's already turned you against me. She went through my social media, my past. She's controlling." Darren lifted his phone slightly. "I investigated because your story didn't add up. That's not controlling. That's protecting my relationship." I watched something inside Mark collapse. The confident manipulator. The martyr. All that was left was a desperate man scrambling for control. I recorded everything, Darren continued. Every lie. Every admission. "That's illegal," Mark shouted. "One-party consent," Darren said flatly. "Look it up." Mark looked at me one last time. "You think you've won," he said. "But when he hurts you, and he will, I won't be there to pick up the pieces." I met his gaze without flinching. I'd rather be alone than trust someone who weaponizes love. Mark left the cafe shaking, knocking his chair over as he went. He didn't look back. The fallout was immediate. Within days, Mark started telling his version of the story to mutual friends. In his version, I was manipulative. Darren was isolated. He was the victim of jealousy and paranoia. So we showed receipts. Darren organized everything. Photos with timestamps, screenshots of Mark's old posts, the recording from the cafe, the messages Mark had sent me, fishing for updates. We sent it to everyone who reached out concerned. The responses came fast. I had no idea. He told me something completely different. This is disturbing. Within 3 days, the narrative Mark had built collapsed under the weight of truth. Friends distanced themselves. Invitations dried up. Someone confronted him at a group dinner, and he stormed out. One message stuck with me. "I always thought something was off about how he talked about Darren," an old college friend wrote. "I just never thought he'd go this far." Neither had we. But the damage was done. And there was still one final chapter left to close. 3 weeks passed before Mark tried one last time. He showed up at Darren's workplace during lunch. I wasn't there. Darren told me about it later that night. His voice steady but tight around the edges, like he was recounting something that had already been processed but still left residue. Mark hadn't called ahead. He'd just appeared, eyes red, face drawn, desperation clinging to him like a second skin. He walked straight up to Darren's desk while half the office pretended not to stare. "Please," Mark said, his voice already breaking. "I made a mistake. I know I did. But I loved you for so long, and it messed me up. You have to understand that." Darren stood up slowly. "You need to leave," he said. "Just 5 minutes," Mark begged. 5 minutes to explain. "I gave you 8 years," Darren replied. "You used them to save photos for future manipulation and lie to my girlfriend's face. There's nothing left to explain." Mark's expression flickered. "I started therapy," he said quickly. "Twice a week. I'm getting help." "That's good," Darren said. "That's for you. It doesn't undo what you did to us." People were openly watching now, Mark noticed. His voice sharpened desperation, tipping into anger. "You think you're better than me," he snapped. "You think she's worth all this. She'll hurt you eventually. They always do." Darren didn't raise his voice. "Even if she did, which she won't, I'd never turn to someone who tried to destroy my life with calculated lies." Security was already on their way. Mark left before they arrived, but not before half the office had witnessed the scene. Darren's manager pulled him aside, afterward asked if everything was okay, if additional safety measures were needed. That night we talked, really talked. Not just about Mark, but about us. You could have believed him, Darren said quietly. Most people would have. I almost did, I admitted. 12 photos. The crying, the performance. But something felt wrong. And if I was going to lose you, I needed to be sure first. He nodded slowly. Thank you for trusting me, he said. Or at least trusting your instincts about me. I smiled faintly. I'm just glad I checked the timestamps. He laughed, then the first real laugh in weeks. Who knew metadata would save our relationship? As for Mark, the last we heard, he wasn't doing well. He lost most of his friend group when the truth came out. A few people still defended him, saying he was just in love, but they were in the minority. He moved about a month later. New job, new city, new start. 2 weeks after that, he emailed Darren. It was long, apologetic, self-aware in a way that felt rehearsed but not entirely fake. I know you probably hate me. You might always, but I'm working on myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I understand how wrong I was. Darren read it once, then closed his laptop. Are you going to respond? I asked. No, he said. He's not my responsibility anymore. Cold, maybe, but necessary. 8 years of friendship doesn't entitle someone to forgiveness after they try to blow up your life with deliberate lies. Darren and I are stronger now than we were before all of this. We're moving in together next month. Our parents met last weekend, awkward in all the expected ways, but good. Sometimes Darren still gets quiet. 8 years is a long time to lose someone, even when they turn out to be rotten at the core. When that happens, I give him space. Grief doesn't disappear just because the truth is ugly. The biggest lesson in all of this is simple: trust your gut, but verify before you react. Those photos look damning. Anyone would have believed them. If I'd confronted Darren that night in anger, accused him, maybe even ended things on the spot, Mark would have gotten exactly what he wanted, and the damage might have been irreversible. Instead, we chose patience, facts, trust. Not a bad foundation for a future.